welcome. What does it mean to have meditations on the Rosary? Well, joining me today on Spiritual Invitation is Sandra Enders, and she's going to tell us all about it. Now, a little bit about our guest. Sandy's been teaching in the social and behavioral sciences for almost 20 years in the Connecticut Community College system and online for Central Texas College. She is a licensed mental health clinician at Catholic Charities in New Haven with plans to open her own practice soon. She holds various degrees, 3 at graduate level, and recently completed a certificate in biblical scripture. Sandy is active in her local community and Catholic parish of St. Pio in East Haven. She's always been fascinated by the metaphysical world, devotions to the Blessed Mother, and different meditation practices. She tries to incorporate general spirituality into her professional counseling practice. She also uses angel cards for her own personal insight and for fundraising in the community. Lately, she is studying the Jungian tarot based on the work of the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. Sandy is the author of Meditations on the Rosary. Sandy, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Oh, so good to have you. I'm really excited. I mean, the devotion to Mother Mary out there in the entire world is just incredible.
It is.
Fascinated with it. So I'm so glad you're here to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Now, before we get started, just tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey. How did it begin for you?
Well, I've always been fascinated by the metaphysical world since early on. I grew up Catholic. My mother was very devout with Christian thought and practice. And for that reason, I think I got a lot of it from her. But also because I think it was a support system for me. Childhood was a bit difficult. The finances were rough with Mom and Dad, and they both worked long hours. I was the youngest of 3, and my 2 older siblings married in their teens, and I was kind of left alone a lot in my younger years. And I think the need was there for me to latch on to a metaphysical source for support. When I look back now on it.
Right.
But I think the need was there for my mother, too. I think that's why she developed a good spiritual background, because she had a difficult life herself. And I think the combination of my mother, watching my mother practice, and the need for me in childhood, I think that kind of developed it. And it's just something I kept through the years. I found it works. I mean,
it does work. It was a natural connection for you.
It was. I get a lot out of it.
Oh.
It keeps me balanced.
I understand that. I know, that's wonderful. Now, the Rosary, what is the Rosary?
Well, it's beads, 150 beads, actually.
Yeah, you have yours and I have
50,
mine.
Actually, it's 59 beads. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I have...
These are rosary beads.
I have a pink quartz crystal here with the sterling silver crucifix. You have, it's actually 59 beads. 53 of them you say the Hail Mary, and 6 of them you say the Our Father.
Okay.
Of course, it starts out with the Apostles' Creed.
Right.
Then you do the Hail Mary, the 3 Our Father, and then there's 5 decades of 10 each. Those you do the Hail Mary, and in the middle you do one which is the Our Father. So that's the Glory Be, 2 in the middle there.
Okay.
So there's 5 what they call decades, 10 each.
And because of the spacing, rosary. That's how people know when they're saying the Rosary. They don't have to count in their heads. No. This is why they have the beads.
In fact,
so they know where they're at.
It started out as tying knots in strings. That's how it started out years ago.
Okay.
But there's a lot more to that than repetitive prayer, which is why I'm so fascinated by it, because it gets so deep. You could go really deep into it.
See, and that's something I didn't realize.
A lot of people don't realize
that how
Carla.
Much, because I thought there's one prayer and that's it. There's one way of doing it, but there's actually... There's a number of prayers, right? There's different types of prayers and meditations that you
also
can do.
it's each, there's total of 20 20 mysteries on the Rosary. So there's 4 sections of 5 decades. So you could go to do the whole Rosary. You go through this 4 times. This whole thing 4 times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
To go through the whole Rosary, the whole
Really?
thing, you do this 4 times because there's 5 mysteries on each
Right.
of the 4 sections.
Gotcha.
So it's a lengthy process.
It is a lengthy process.
And a lot of people don't go through the whole thing. They'll do
Right.
one on one day, one on the other day, and the other, you know,
Right.
like that, because
Right.
it's just very long. But the 4 areas, the 4 breaks that it's divided into are the joyful mysteries, and then there's 5 mysteries, 5 events in Christ's life under the joyful mysteries, and each event, has a what they call the fruit of the mystery, which teaches a lesson or a virtue. It's called the fruit of the mystery. So you have 4 sections, 5 mysteries under each section, broken into the different events in Christ's life, and then under each mystery you have a fruit of the mystery, which is the lesson underlying the mystery.
I did not realize the complexity of it.
It is very complex. If you study it, it gets very complex.
It is, yeah. And is that what you're referring to when you say meditations on the Rosary,
Yes.
or is that different?
No, that's what I'm referring to.
That's what you mean.
There's a lot to it. And it goes, you know, as a psychotherapist, I could see the value in it aside from the metaphysical prayer value, because it can really be a tool for development, human development, character development, because of the lessons, the Christian lessons each of the 20 mysteries teach. That's why I'm so fascinated by it. A lot of people don't realize it. You could get the spiritual aspect out of it, you know, trying to connect with Jesus or Mary.
Right.
But there's also the whole psychological aspect to it of personal development, character development, which teaches the Christian virtues.
And how does that, come about during the prayer? Just because you're focusing on that?
Yeah.
You're thinking about it?
You're thinking about it.
Oh,
so you
right.
get the visual, because every Rosary book you have, you're going to have a nice visual there. You're going to have 20. I use black and white visuals of the French illustrator Paul Gustave Doré in my book. He did wood engravings, so I used his visual. But every Rosary book you pick up will have a visual of each of the 20 meditations.
Okay, so when people are saying it, they're
you'll
looking
have
at
the visual
book.
there.
Okay.
So you'll have the auditory process of repeating the prayer. You'll have the visual sensory processing of looking at it. Plus you'll have the cognitive thought process of the actual event. Now my book takes it a step further, because I wrote 20 guided imagery scripts of each of the 20 events. So it's also in an audio. It's the book's in an audio version, so you could
people just listen.
Yeah, so you could sit back and you don't even have to read it. You could sit back and enjoy it and put your cognitive thoughts right into the life of Christ, and imagine you're there. Imagine you're in the Garden of Gethsemane, sitting with him, speaking with him on that night. It really places the individual right in the scene, which is why I'm so excited about it. So it could get as deep as you want, Carla. It could really get deep.
It's a powerful.
It is a powerful.
It's more powerful than you think. I mean, you tend to think of it
as a recitation of repetitive prayers,
and
you could use it like that. You could use it like that, but you could also get very deep into it if you want to be.
More.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what's the legend of the Rosary?
About the 13th century, I believe, St. Dominic, it's legend that he had an apparition of the Blessed Mother, and she handed him the Rosary. Now, the background to that is this was towards the end of the Crusades period. I think it was early 13th century, and the Vatican was battling a heresy running rampant throughout France at that time. The Albigensians were practicing a faith, a sect of Catholicism that kind of went off the grid, called Catharism. And it was deemed heretical by the Pope at that time. So the Pope was trying to stamp that out. Now these battles lasted 2 or 3 decades. So that's the background to it. St. Dominic was going into battle, and the night before a big battle, she supposedly appeared to him, handed him the rosary, and said, "You are favored tomorrow," and he won that battle. Also about that time, now this is the southern part of France, also about that time there was a rich English nobleman, de Montfort, who was also leading battles on the side of the, St. Dominic too, against the Cathars that was practicing the heresy. So they won, eventually they won, they stamped out the heresy. It took quite a few decades. But the rich nobleman, English nobleman, had financed the early Dominican religion that St. Dominic started. So the two of them together, it ended up the cradle of the Dominicans in that southern area of southern France, and it propelled the whole religious order of the Dominicans. That's why the whole rosary is usually associated with the Dominicans, and when you see it pictured throughout history, you often see the Blessed Mother handing the rosary to St. Dominic.
So it's all because of that when her appearing.
Yeah.
And is it as kind of as simple as it worked, like it was right, like the apparition was true, and he did win, and that's what spurred it on, that the rosary stuck around?
Could be. I mean, that's what started a lot of it. But, I mean, that was the legend. There's also the scholarly,
Oh, okay.
which I get into the book. I do. I talk about the legend, but there's also the more logical. It was developing. It started to develop probably around the 12th or 3rd century by using strings with knots tied. And you know who first started using them? The uneducated laity. At that time, the only people who were educated back then were the monks, the literate that could read, were the monks or the nobility or the religious leaders. The average person wasn't educated, they couldn't read, but they wanted, the laity wanted to participate with the monks. So the monks would say their 150 psalms in their daily hours of the liturgy, I think they called it. And the laity wanted to participate, so they developed these strings, 150, and they would start reciting. So that was going on around that time.
The same
so
thing.
there's a little explanation there, but the legend is fun. The legend is fun. It just kept developing from there. Over the next century, the 14th century, they started to put the events in Christ's life, attach the events in Christ's life.
So it's evolved.
Oh, it's evolved.
It's evolved to what it started as.
Exactly.
Now what is it? I am so interested, whether it be people I know or just people that show up at my classes. What is it about the devotion to Mother Mary? Why? I mean, this is truly worldwide, and people that have it, it's deep and dedicated.
Yeah.
What do you think it is?
I've been thinking about that, Carla, the last few days, and I don't know. I mean, I really don't have an answer to it. I mean, she's being seen all over the world throughout history. I've been to quite a few of her apparition sites myself. Yeah. I really don't know. Coming from a psychological perspective, I keep telling myself, well, it could be, in the mind. It could be an apparition that's developed from the person, a psychological reason. But then I say, well, there could also be a metaphysical reason. So, it's hard to say what's metaphysical, what's coming from the mind itself, and where do they meet? I mean, they're both so intertwined. I think so anyways.
Right.
The consciousness in the human being definitely has to have some kind of a metaphysical part of it. So it's hard to say where does it end? Where does one end, and where does the other one take off? Yeah, it's probably a combination of metaphysical and psychological. I'm sure that the person's faith has a lot to do with it. I would think.
And putting their trust.
Yes, exactly.
It's blind trust, really, into Mother Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Where do I jump to next? So, What is your fascination with the apparitions of Mother Mary? I mean, you say you've been to a number of them.
Yeah,
then,
I was Fatima Lourdes.
which is when Mother Mary will literally appear.
Yeah, I mean, I've
right?
never seen her. I've never
Right,
had
right.
I mean, I did have an event about 30 years ago in my apartment, but I don't think it was Mother Mary. And I kind of think it more was, I don't know what it was, but we won't go there.
Could have been an angel, yeah.
An
okay.
angel, I know,
yeah.
we won't go there.
Right.
But I went to Medjugorje early on when they first
right.
started to appear. I think she started appearing there in '81. I was there in '89. That was something else, that trip. And then did Fatima Lourdes, Rue de Bac in Paris.
Okay.
With St. Catherine of Labouré. She developed the miraculous medal from that. And then St. Mary Major in Rome. It started off as Our Lady of the Snows. I don't know. I just like to travel to the sites.
Right.
You know, you get
feel something?
Yeah, you do.
You
well,
do feel
I think
a connection?
Yeah, I think the strongest one was Medjugorje.
I had a guest on to talk about
Yeah,
that.
it almost felt like, because it was eclectic, it was like they came from all over the world. It wasn't just Catholics going there.
Right.
It was almost like a modern day Stonehenge. That's the only way I could describe, that's how I felt the energy at Medjugorje. This was in '89 before the Civil War, so, I hear there was a lot of destruction after that. But that's the only way I could describe it. People were coming from all over the world. I mean, Buddhists, Hindus, all different sects.
Yeah.
So you kind of got that energy there, whereas Fatima was more like Catholic. Lourdes was kind of commercialized for me, but every site has a kind of a different culture to it.
So you don't have to be Catholic
No.
or Christian to reach out to Mother Mary,
No.
do you?
Medjugorje was full of
everybody.
Everybody. When I was there
all
in '89.
cultures,
Yeah.
all religious backgrounds, all right, and so you don't have to be. And I think we tend to think, oh, okay, this is what this religion does. This is what, but she's available. To all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of religions have that feminine divine in it, within it. Even if you get into some of the, away from the traditional three Abrahamic religions, the native religions and the Eastern religions, they all seem to have some kind of feminine divine attached.
Attached to it, yes.
So you might get that going around the world. With the old Egyptian had Osiris and Iris. It was Osiris and the woman there. They all seem to have that.
They
through antiquities too. All the artists created the mother holding the baby too, long before Christ was around.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of ingrained in the consciousness of humanity.
Right.
The mother and child.
Right. It goes way back.
Yeah, and anybody could relate
child.
to it. It could be that. I don't know. But yeah, it's serious.
So anyone can say the rosary?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I'm surprised that more of the Protestant faiths don't get into it because it is on the life of Christ. I mean, outside of Christian thinking, I don't know if anybody would, unless they want to learn about the life of Christ. You might want to learn about the life of Christ. But it's really just stayed with the Catholics predominantly, which I never understood because it's on the events of Christ's life. And I asked myself, well, why didn't some of the Protestant sects really take off with it the way the Catholics did? I don't know, maybe because it arose out of a Marian devotion. It's considered a Marian devotion, which is odd, Carla, because it's not on the life of Mary.
Right.
It's focused on the life of Christ.
All right, so that's what we don't think of, though.
Yeah,
do we?
it's focused on the 20 mysteries are really on the whole life of Christ. I mean, Mary's in about 4 or 5, 6 of them dedicated to her. The glorious mysteries, her Assumption is one of them. Her coronation's one of them. The wedding at Cana is one, that started the intercession of praying to her to get to her son. So, I mean, she's involved in it, but I often wondered why it ended up a Marian devotion rather than you know, because it's mostly on the life of Christ, not the life of Mary. But it ended up taking off as a Marian devotion. That could have been just how it was marketed through the Catholic Church, you know, centuries back. It just kind of arose out of that.
Right.
Because the Catholic Church is known for Marian devotions. The Protestant churches aren't really known for the Marian devotions.
Right.
They're centered on Jesus Christ more.
And somebody from a different background, a different culture, okay, they're not Catholic, Protestant, not Christian, they would get from it because she's just a revered spiritual person, you think?
You mean like a Hindu or Buddhist practicing?
Yes, right, to be able to practice at the rosary, or just to be interested in Jesus as, you know, a healer or as a spiritual
comparative
leader.
religions. A lot of people enjoy that. I mean, I do.
Right.
I like to read up on Hinduism and Buddhism, and it doesn't mean I'm going to leave the Catholic Church or, you know, take Jesus Christ down from the top of that pinnacle.
Right.
But I love to do comparative religions, and I think a lot of other people do too. Or even just to learn the virtues, the Christian virtues from the Rosary. Like I said, it kind of teaches the Christian virtues which come from his teachings out of the New Testament, because all his parables that he talked about, they all have some kind of a moral teaching, some kind of a virtue that he's trying to get across.
Right.
And that's what the Rosary tends to do. And anybody from any religion would benefit from learning his teachings, because a lot of the religions are very similar with their teachings. I mean, you probably know a lot of them are similar. Love your neighbor, love your God, treat your neighbor well, take in the poor, feed the hungry. I mean, you know, they all say pretty much the same thing. And it's sad that organized religion kind of separates us. I think so. Organized,
instead of bringing us together.
Instead of bringing us together, organized religion tends to separate us sometimes. But a lot of people don't realize that religion is very different than spirituality. You know, like some people, you know, they just kind of equate it. It's very different. I mean, religion I shouldn't say just, it's very important. It's a man-made social institution, religion. Spirituality is broad. It's just so open. It does intersect, you know, at a point, but it's sad that sometimes it keeps us apart. I mean, look at the wars throughout history that's been in the name of God, a God.
Well, even just being open to the fact it's the Rosary, but anyone can say it.
Sure.
Right? Nothing's going to happen. If you connect, you connect. If you don't, you don't. If you see the value of it, you know, it's just no different than, like you say, anything, any other cultures that we take bits and pieces from it.
You always stress in your shows, everybody's journey is different.
Everybody's journey is different.
I mean, I've heard you say that quite a few times. Everybody's journey is different. I mean, I practice a lot of mindfulness. I teach my clients that to stay in the moment, and that's an Eastern type of thinking.
It's a very
very Buddhist.
Right.
But I practice that a lot.
Why
and I
not
teach
practice it?
It's important. Well, I work with addictions a lot, and that's very important to stay in the moment, stay in the present moment, if you want to be able to control your thoughts and behavior. So, I mean, am I wrong because I'm practicing a Buddhist?
No, exactly.
And I'm Catholic.
It's like, and it's the beauty of spirituality. It's like a little buffet, you know, and we just take over. I'll do a little mindfulness, sure. Well, what the heck? I'll try the Rosary. Why not, right? And just take what you want.
But a lot of people get the wrong impression about that. They're rigid in their thinking. Centric, religious centric. But that's their path.
That's their path.
That's their path. They may eventually get past that.
We don't know, right?
But I don't. I don't like that religious centric thinking at all. I teach a sociology class, and I respect all religions and all walks of life. I love to learn about all religions.
Right. Well, I'm glad you're bringing out that it's open to everybody. This isn't just a Catholic segment here today, But anyways, we're getting right to the end. So tell me, how do you define spirituality?
I think it's the individual's relationship with not only the higher power, I view it as a relationship with the universe in general. Lately, I've been really getting into energy psychology and realizing that we're all connected.
I know.
You know, and that collective unconscious. I think it's more, you know, I used to think it was the relationship with God. Now I'm thinking it's a bit of the relationship in the universe to each other and God. That's just my thinking. That's spirituality, not religion.
Right.
Okay.
The spirituality,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right. And don't you find your definitions always changing
Evolving.
and
Yeah.
evolving?
Oh, yeah. The more you learn, the more you're going to evolve.
Right.
Sure.
You're going to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm
This
so
was
happy.
so fun. Yeah.
I was very
Thank
happy you had
for,
me. Thank you.
Yeah. You can tell you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, I am.
And
It's a beautiful tool.
It's
It's
a beautiful tool.
for personal development and spiritual development. It's twofold.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize how deep you could get into it.
No, and I'm going to take it up again. I think I'm going to try it just to see
Good.
what it feels like and what comes of it. So,
Good.
So
Thank
thanks,
you.
Sandy. All right, so we're going to have all of Sandy's contact information up on the screen in just a moment. If you want to watch this episode again, you can just on youtube.com, type my name into the search and all the past episodes will come up. Also, you can get on my website at carlaaugustin.com. I want to thank you so much for watching. This has been Spiritual Invitation. I'm your host, Carla Augustin, inviting you to explore spirituality.